All right, we're diving deep into a silent battle that's happening right under the homes of one particular American city. It's a war waged by geology, chemistry, and just plain old infrastructure. So let's get into it. So, if you're a homeowner in San Antonio, what do you think is the single biggest threat to your house? The summer heat? Maybe a big storm? Well, the real answer is probably not what you're thinking. It's not something you can easily see, and it's definitely not something you can prepare for in the usual ways. That's right. The number one threat is the very ground your house is sitting on. It turns out the unique environment in and around San Antonio creates this kind of perfect storm of conditions that attack a home's most vital systems from below and from within. Now, to really get why this is happening, we've got to look at the specific environmental forces at play. And I mean specific. This isn't a problem you'd find just anywhere. It's a super local issue born from a unique combination of factors right there in San Antonio. What's so wild is how these four things basically team up against a house. You've got this unstable clay soil that's always moving, and you've got incredibly hard water that's eating away at pipes from the inside. Then you throw in the stress of brutal summer heat and the shock of a sudden winter freeze, and you get an environment that just makes plumbing systems fail way, way faster than they would anywhere else. So let's zoom in on the two main villains in this story, the soil and the water. You can think of these two as being in a constant, destructive conversation with all the pipes buried underneath San Antonio homes. Okay, so the whole region is sitting on this expansive clay soil. The best way to picture it is like a giant, powerful sponge. When it rains and gets wet, the soil swells up, pushing upwards and putting this immense pressure on rigid pipes. But then, when it dries out, it shrinks and contracts, pulling away and causing the ground to shift all over again. This constant push and pull year after year can literally bend and snap pipes. So while the ground is attacking the pipes from the outside, the water's staging its own attack from the inside. San Antonio's water comes from the Edwards Aquifer, and it's famous for being some of the hardest water in the entire country. All those minerals build up inside pipes and appliances, forming this thick rock-like scale that slowly chokes off water flow and just destroys equipment. So you have these really aggressive environmental forces, right? Now let's see what happens when they collide with the aging infrastructure you find in so many of San Antonio's older, more established neighborhoods. Yeah, if your home was built before 1980, especially in areas like Monte Vista or Alamo Heights, there is a very good chance it has a ticking time bomb hiding in the walls and buried under the foundation. And we're talking about galvanized steel pipes. For decades, these were the standard, but they have one huge flaw. They rust and corrode from the inside out, and that super hard water we just talked about, it hits the accelerator on that whole process, leading to terrible water pressure and even rust particles breaking off into your water. You might actually see this yourself, that brownish, discolored water coming from your tap. That's what this is. Okay, so now let's connect the dots. Let's see how all these invisible causes lead to very real and, let's be honest, very expensive symptoms. We're going to trace what a homeowner might notice all the way back to what's actually happening underground. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been walking through your house and felt a mysterious warm spot on the floor? Or maybe you opened your water bill and just about had a heart attack from a sudden spike. These aren't just random little things. They are classic, textbook warning signs. This is the classic sign of a slab leak. It means the water lines running through your home's concrete foundation have a leak. Either the hard water has eaten a tiny pinhole leak from the inside, or that shifting clay soil we talked about has literally cracked the pipe from the outside. That warm spot you're feeling, that's hot water pooling right under your feet. Okay, what about outside the house? You ever see those soggy patches in the yard that never seem to dry up no matter how hot it is? Or you start to catch, well, an unpleasant sewage smell? That is another major red flag, and it points to a totally different kind of underground failure. And this is just a perfect example of how all these forces work together. The shifting clay soil creates tiny cracks in your main sewer line. Local trees like oaks and ash trees have these really aggressive roots that are always hunting for water. They find those tiny cracks, force their way into the pipe, and just create these massive root balls that cause blockages and horrible sewage backups. Here's another really common complaint you hear in the area. Why do water heaters that are supposed to last, 15 years seem to fail in what feels like half that time? Well, the answer goes right back to that water source. The culprit is sediment from all that hard water. All those minerals settle at the bottom of the water heater tank and form this thick, hard layer of scale. This scale basically acts like an insulator, so the heating element has to work way harder and longer to heat the water, and eventually, it just burns out. It also takes up space in the tank until the whole unit finally gives up the ghost, often in just 8 to 12 years. So the problems are serious, no doubt about it. But the good news is, the solutions have evolved too. You can't fight these unique environmental challenges with old-school methods. You need a modern playbook, packed with high-tech tools and a really smart approach. The whole process has gotten so much smarter. It's not about guesswork anymore. It's a clear 3-step process. It starts with getting the right expert out to your house, then moves to a precise diagnosis where you see the problem and approve the work. And it ends with a repair that's actually verified to be fixed. It's all about precision. And just look at the technology itself. The old way to clear a clog was a mechanical snake, which, basically just punches a hole through the blockage. But the modern way? Hydrojetting. This thing uses super high pressure water to scour the entire inside of the pipe. It blasts away years of scale buildup and absolutely shreds those invasive tree roots. It's the difference between temporarily clearing a little path and completely restoring the pipe to like-new condition. And this is crucial. Diagnosis isn't a destructive guessing game anymore. Plumbers can now send a tiny high-def video camera right down into your sewer lines to see the exact location of a crack or a root blockage. And for those slab leaks, they use electronic listening devices to pinpoint the source of the leak without having to just start demolishing your floor. So, when you boil it all down, the key takeaway is this. Protecting your home really starts with understanding the unique world it lives in, the soil it sits on, the water flowing through its pipes, and the age of its systems. That's all part of your home's story. And knowing that story is the first step to preventing a disaster. And that brings us to our final thought here. You really can think of your home as being in a constant conversation with its surroundings. Those gurgling drains, the subtle changes in water pressure, the sudden high bills, those are all words in the dialogue. The real question is, are you listening?